Do you want to do the intro?
Welcome back to Podcrash. We've got a very special guest today. It's Sir Chris Hoy.
I've never heard you do your media voice
here we go.
before, Phil.
That is the media voice.
Hello.
I've heard you've got a certain voice as well.
It's my media voice. Welcome.
Oh no.
So I like coming here. The last time we came here, people tend to, you get undressed, you do a bit of weightlifting, you start a few fires, you get fed well, you get looked after, so it's always a good time.
We did weightlifting last time.
Yeah. Yeah, you got me squatting again.
How's your gym, Phil? Phil's got a new gym, which he's very excited about. And
Yeah.
it's you just installed that recently.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Just had it installed 3 days ago, actually.
How are the finances looking?
Yeah, that's why I started the podcast. So hopefully, someone listening, please sponsor me.
It's a good investment, though.
Yeah, it's a good investment. Hopefully for after my cycling life as well. I've got something to go into, and I'm doing a personal training course, which has been taken 2 years now. So I need to finish it really, but I'd like to do some personal training classes in the gym. So yeah.
You've already got the kind of terms and conditions sorted with Claire. If anything were to ever happen with the relationship,
Yeah,
you're going to take the gym out of the house.
Yeah, I think it will be.
He's going to live in the gym.
Yeah.
Sleeping bag on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually at the start of the podcast we do the news, but because we did a podcast 2 days ago, we don't really have much news. So do you want to make just what's your predictions for next week and just see if it happens? I got news for you. They just randomly talk news because they do a filming earlier in the week.
Have you found your bike?
Have I found my bike is still lost. British Cycling is still asking for it back, so maybe hopefully when they
Is this the one that you lost on eBay?
Yeah, lost on eBay. So yeah, if anyone sees a size 58 Cervelo R5 with mechanical dual lace and 36 spoke hand-bit wheels, then give me a shout because I really need it back soon. And but no, there's something in the pipeline. I might have a bike in the future, but I'm a bit reluctant to give it back because it's a special bike. People get attached to bikes.
It's one of the things I felt it was a shame at the end of your career when you can't keep a bike that you won a medal on, or you had your Olympic bike.
Yeah.
You never get to keep the bikes. You have to always hand them back in, which is...
That's the thing. It's been my bike for 3 years, and it's the only kind of Olympic-esque bike that I have left, basically, because it's the one I took to the games as well.
People assume you get them, and you get to hang them up on the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the bikes go back into all the junior. The old bikes get sort of filtered down to the junior and the academy guys.
I think so. Yeah.
You see young lads riding on, Bradley Wiggins' old Beijing bike, or
just like at Meadowbank.
Exactly.
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 What's your thoughts on Meadowbank, Phil?
Yeah, it's a shame it's been taken down, isn't it? I was taking the piss a few times.
But you didn't actually mean it.
I didn't mean it. No, it's a shame.
Did you ever ride there?
No, never been there.
It's a bit of a death trap, to be fair.
Is it?
Yeah, well, that's where Jason Quealy got his big scar. Were you there for that?
I was the one that caused the crash.
Oh, wow. Well, this is a
Did you
great
know
start.
that?
On you go.
Well, technically it was Craig that caused the crash. So it was a Kieran final, 1996 at the Edinburgh Grand Prix. Craig was at the front, I was behind him, last corner. Oh no, it wasn't. It was the mile. It wasn't the Kieran. So there was about 10 of us in there. It was like a scratch race final.
Ah, okay.
Well,
spread the blame around.
All academic, because basically Craig, to this day, says that he just held his line. But if you watch the video, he came out a little bit as I was on his wheel. Touched wheels. I came down. Then it took down, I think, Derek Smith and Jason Quealy and about 4 of the guys. But basically Jason was very unlucky because he slid along the track on his back. And I was lying there and I was all burnt up and small splinters, and I was feeling pretty sorry for myself. And I just heard a voice, this guy screaming, going, "I've got half the effing track on my back." And I thought, I bet you're not as bad as me. And I was lying there thinking, I need the first aid first. I looked across and I saw this CC Lank skin suit with a bit of wood poking out one side.
Jeez.
And then another bit poking out the other, and realised it was the same piece of wood, 18 inches long. And he was very unlucky. I think one of the bikes had sort of gouged a bit of the track, and he'd slid across it on his back and picked up this piece of wood.
You don't appreciate how bad it is until you see him with his top off, and you see the scars on his back, and then it looks a lot bigger than it actually is.
People think it's a shark. Like when he's in Australia and they say, "What happened to your back?" He said, "I got bitten by a shark." They go,
"Yeah, it's huge."
it looks like it could be a shark attack. So he was in hospital he was in intensive care for a week in Edinburgh, and then that one incident put him off riding any bunch races or sprints or anything. He then said, "I'm only going to ride time trial events."
Well, even when it came to the warm-ups at the track, he was a little bit unsure of it.
Yeah.
So in a way, it created an Olympic kilo champion because he stopped doing any kind of match racing or bunch racing and focused on the kilo. 4 years later, he was Olympic champion. It was quite an amazing story how he only came into cycling, I think he was 24, 25.
Yeah.
1995, he was cycling to and from his work, and he was a former water polo player, a really strong swimmer, and he was thinking about doing triathlon because he said, well, you can swim well, you seem to be pretty good on a bike, and I mean, he can't run for toffee, but apart from that.
I loved having Quealy in the team because I think it's to have someone of that kind of stature. I don't know if like did you kind of idolise him a little bit when you were starting out a little bit?
Well, the weird thing was, I started way before him, so even though I was younger than him, he came on the team, and it was just like, this guy could barely ride a bike.
Yeah.
It was like a beginner, a novice getting on a motorbike, like a 750 or 1000cc, and just going, poof, and could barely hang on. Like, he had so much power, so much speed, but he could barely ride his bike. He did a warm-up jump in Valencia at the World Cup, and he looked at the time like he was going about 2 or 3 tenths quicker than anyone gone before on this Metron with double discs and the noise it made. And he could barely hold the track, like he could barely hold the black line. And even if you watch his kilo from Sydney, Olympic gold medalist, he didn't ride below the red line the whole way. Like, he did about an extra 20 metres. For a guy, you think how fast he could have gone if he could have learned to ride a bike.
Well, that's the thing with the talent transfer guys. A lot of the time, I think sometimes they come in and ruffle a few feathers because they just do their own thing, and they've got very kind of set in their ways. Things like Katie always talks about like having fitness all the time because she's a heptathlete and always feels like she wants to be fit and feels like she could go on a 10k jog whenever she felt like it. And I guess Quealy probably brought a similar kind of thing to the table a little bit.
He just came in with
he started the day on day off stuff.
Yeah, well he was very much of the philosophy of rest, or quality training, quality over volume, and he took it to the nth degree. And the trouble was that a lot of the stuff he got absolutely right, and we learned so much from him and sort of formed our training philosophy around what he did. And we used to do loads of miles, big volume in the gym, way too much stuff, fatigued all the time, and he would sort of laugh at us, lying around exhausted, and he'd sort of turn up at the track and do 4 flying hundreds, nail them all at almost at a race pace. But the trouble was he was almost always tapered and sort of at race fitness or race preparation, and I think he would have benefited from doing a bit more volume. Somewhere between the two of what we were doing and what he was doing was probably just about right.
Okay.
But he just thought about things in a different way. He questioned everything, and he was my mentor. Like, he was Olympic kilo champion, and after Sydney, I decided to start doing the kilo because I had the best guy in the world in my team I could learn from and train with, and as this measure of the man that he, initially he said, "Oh, I'll help you and I'll give you advice with planning your training and everything else," and then you could see that I was catching up a little bit and getting closer to him, and at any point he could have said, "Look, do you know what? We're riding the Commonwealth Games against each other in a year's time. I'm riding for England, or he's riding for England, I'm riding for Scotland. I've given you enough, that's it." But he just kept supporting me and helping me, and even right the way up to the Commie Games. And then, I beat him by a tenth of a second or something, the Olympic champion. He came straight over, and he was genuinely happy. And I remember thinking at the time, if I'm ever in that situation, I really want to try and be even just a little bit.
Just try and hold it back.
Because it's he was an amazing guy. So his ego he had the smallest ego of anybody in the team. He was a really good guy to have around the team.
No, fair enough. It's good that we're talking about mentors because I think that's how it's going to get us into the past. So obviously there's a good pedigree of Scottish sprinters in the team. Jack Carlin says all the time how much he looks up to me. He had a poster of me on his wall, and
you as well. We all had a picture of you, Callum. Still do.
And obviously, there's a couple of pictures of us on the internet floating around the Chris Hoy Trophy. We had that wonderful waistcoat.
Pictures you meant us. the snooker.
What photo?
Well, you've seen the photos of like Chris holding me for a star.
Callum's got like a sort of what looks like can only be described as Jimmy White from World of Snooker. He's got like a waistcoat, this little black tie.
Who chose the outfit?
I don't know. I had to like go for a formal kind of dress, and that was all I had on the go. Basically, it was a lovely waistcoat. It's probably still in the family somewhere. But anyway, so but we're gonna go back further than even that, Phil. We're gonna go back to
even further, yeah.
I guess one of your points was we're interested to see, because I think the system now for an athlete is totally different to when it was when you were starting out. There's like full lottery funding. There's 150 athletes in the team. I guess what was your kind of first interaction with British cycling? Was it as bad as everyone says, where you were kind of sharing skin suits and having to wash them overnight and all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
You had 2 skin suits for the whole year, And if you crashed in one, you had one for the rest of the year. You know, it was like that. And you had a tracksuit top for the World Championships in Manchester '96. You had to sign out this tracksuit top that was a bit grubby and grey, and it had been used for years, like it was a good few years old.
Yeah.
Sign it out, and that was your tracksuit top for the week. And you had to hand it back in. If you didn't hand it back in, you had to pay for it.
There's no eBay back then.
No, true. And you wouldn't. You'd have got nothing for it. It was pretty grim. Proper white, shiny shell suit top but it was pretty cool back in those days.
So when did things start to change? Like, when was the kind of injection of funding or the coaching, or what was the kind of catalyst for getting things off the ground?
It was all the lottery was the biggest thing, the biggest change. You know, up until that point, there were 2 full-time members of staff, and that was it. One was the secretary, one was the kind of chairman.
Yeah.
And everybody else was a volunteer, and they did it because they were passionate about the sport. It was, you know, it was a very different time. It was no less fun. In many ways, it was almost more fun in those days. It
sounds a little bit like Commonwealth Games for Scotland. Like there's a bit. I mean, it's even that one's getting more professional. But I think in the lead up to the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast, like we had more fun than we've ever had on a trip before, because it's just, you know, there's no expectation of professionalism in the nicest way possible. So you can have a great time, and it's more about the kind of the spirit of the games, I guess.
But even within the Scottish team, the biggest change for me I noticed was between '98 in Kuala Lumpur and 2002 in Manchester. 98, we felt like we were, you know, on a holiday. We'd got all the kit. Getting there was the target, because we didn't have a hope in hell to win any medals. You know, I think I got 9th in the sprint and 9th in the kilo, and I was pretty chuffed with that. And then expectations shifted once you started getting funding. Once you became a full-time athlete. So I left uni in '99, became a full-time athlete as soon as I left uni. And then you had, you know, what was like a lottery win. You know, I got £10,000 grant, which paid for your rent, it paid for your food, it paid for everything, and it meant you didn't have to get a job. You could pursue your dream, and it wasn't, you know, the dream was to become Olympic champion, but really it was just about to see how far you could take it, and it was such a pipe dream. It was so far off where we were at the time to think any of us could win an Olympic gold. And going back to Jason Quealy, Jason was the one that really showed us all, that Craig, myself, Jamie, everybody, that, well, you know, if Jason can do it, then it's possible. You know, up until that point, it was something that happened to the Aussies, to the Germans, to you know, the French. It was a different. It was just impossible. We never had a British sprinter to look up to that had done it before.
Did you feel that was a credible disadvantage? Like, were a lot of the other nations professional at that stage? Did it seem like that was going to be one of the big things that would help you guys?
Well, they had facilities. We didn't have an indoor track until '95. So up until that point, you would train April to September. The track would close. You know, Meadowbank, the quays would be locked up. That would be it. Turn up, you know, in 6 months' time, and you can only do so much out on the road. You know, Craig and I used to go out to the airport, the road next to the airport, nice and quiet, nice and flat. Track bike with front brake on it, standing starts.
Oh, you had a front brake?
Front brake.
Have you ever gone down the promenade in Edinburgh and Portobello?
I did that in my BMX.
Oh,
So we used to do BMX sprints up and down. We do kind of, like years ago, when I was about 10 years of age, we used to go down there with the BMXs and do sprints up and down there.
Marco used to take us down there, but we didn't have any brakes, and there's lots of dog walkers.
No.
And Kev almost took himself out about 4 or 5 times.
God,
it's brilliant. There's a video of it somewhere.
Yeah.
So then
we don't recommend that though.
No, we don't. No. And Bruce Cole managed to come up with a system where he'd like lean his bike on a lamppost, and that was his holder.
So you didn't have to have any friends. You could just do it.
Didn't have to have any friends.
No,
you could literally just go down, and it's where the sewage works are in Edinburgh, and the dog pound and the bus depot. You could just go down there of a night and
sounds brilliant,
and have a whale of a time, basically.
Yeah. What a life. Yeah.
He's since retired.
So what year did yacht lottery funding come in?
98.
98.
Yeah.
And that was a big.
It was just. I was so lucky that everything happened at just the right time. 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it. The level would have gone up, and by the time I left uni, I would have been so far behind I wouldn't have made the team.
How old were you when 98?
I was 23.
23.
So in 99, we got a silver medal in the team sprint in Berlin at the World Championships, and that was the first indicator that we had a potential to win a medal of some sort in Sydney in 2000. And it was just exciting, because every year there was improvement. You were on this kind of steep upward curve. We didn't really know much, but we had a thirst for knowledge. We were desperately asking. We had like Martin Barras came on as our coach pre-Sydney, and then he left just after Sydney. And then, you know, that was Ian Dyer came on board in 2002, and as did Shane. And it was, you know, this sort of forming of it was the beginning of the start of this kind of real upward turn for British cycling. Athens was another breakthrough Olympics for us, and then Beijing was the real big one.
I guess that's the interesting bit, because you've got the funding, and then the other bit is when you start to get the staff and start to get that culture and that pedigree in there. But I always think like the kind of the golden moment for British cycling was when they had Dave B, Shane, Boardman and Steve Peters all working together as that top four. And like from the outside looking in, you can say, you know, these all look like quite similar guys. They probably got quite similar opinions, but they had it out on quite a few occasions.
Yeah. And very different personalities. And it was almost like, I've heard it being described before, like a four-legged stool. If you took one of them away, it fell over.
Yeah.
As it kind of did. We saw that happen.
Well, you can last at 3, but it's not quite
it's
stable.
a wobbly one. You know, it just, they were all very different personalities, and they all brought an individual or a unique element to the party, and it was, they were fantastic. It's fantastic to have people like that in charge who had vision and had belief. And it was tough, and it was clear, and you knew, you know, there was kind of, if you didn't perform, then you were out, and it was very clear from day one that here's your performance targets. If you meet these, we'll keep supporting you. If you don't, then you're out. And it's, you know, it's the way elite sport is.
Was there ever a moment you got close to the edge?
2003 was tough because 2002 I won the kilo in Denmark. I became world champion. We won the team sprint. It was a brilliant year. And then 2003 it all went pear-shaped, and basically Jamie was there, Jason, Craig and myself all going for 2 kilo spots in Athens. And I had a terrible Worlds, came fourth.
It's not too bad.
Well, yeah, I'd gone in as world
Unlucky
champion.
Phil.
It's a good result for us now.
And, so that was it. It was like, you know, no medal. We got third in the team sprint. And then
that's not bad either.
Nationals were but we had, the thing was, in those days, we won a medal in every team sprint Worlds from 1999 until 2011 or 2010.
Yeah, it was kind of a more recent example. So a more recent example would be like the women's TP squad.
Yeah,
you kind of burst onto the scene and then consistent the whole time.
So we only won it twice, but we were silver. I think most of the time we were second or third, and then we had a couple of wins. But anyway, the 2003 was a disaster. Just Craig decided to start riding the kilo. He was knocking out 101s, which was super quick at that time. Jason had obviously won the Olympics before, defending Olympic champion. Jamie had arrived in the scene, was knocking out 102s, short 102s, long 101s. And then I was staring down the barrel of, I might not even make the team sprint team, might not get a kilo place.
Yeah.
And it was really tough. And not that I ever thought about giving up, but just this feeling of, oh God, you know, I was 27 at that point. And as soon as you get to that sort of mid-20s, once you start underperforming, people then, every time you underperform, people go, all right, is this the start of the decline now towards the end of your career?
Yeah.
Which, you know, you look back now, you think, well, I went until I was 36, so, you know, I still had a decade to go. But at the time, I didn't know that. So it was tough, and I
think people don't realise how precarious the situation is in the kind of UK sports system compared to professional sport. So professional sport, you might get a 2-3 year contract, and if you happen to have a bad year at the end of your contract, you're in a bad place.
Yeah.
But on our system, it's really so performance focused that, you know, if they can chuck you off any day for no reason, basically just because they think you won't meet your targets. That doesn't happen very often. But there's that constant expectation that you have to perform. That you're there to do a job, and you're there to do something about it, I guess.
And your funding is based on your performance at one race every year.
Yeah.
Every World Championship.
Every World Championship. So you could be Olympic champion, but turn up at the Worlds and come fourth, and your funding's cut from. And you know, people think that professional cyclists are earning 6-figure salaries or more, but you know, 25 grand is A-level funding. That you know, that's what Olympic champions.
Yeah, it's when I tell people, how much do you earn, they're like surprised.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks we're earning the same amount as footballers, but
it's a bit of a tricky balance
not
to strike though, because obviously it's lottery funding, it's government funding, and obviously the situation that you came into is like, obviously it would have been a year later, there was no funding option. A year earlier, there was no funding option at all. So it's always like a tricky line to walk. But yeah, sometimes it is tough, and sometimes I think you ask yourself, like, will that help someone's performance? Because you'll have sometimes guys that go to the World Championships who have no other sponsors, who will be on 28k a year, and then end up getting dropped down to 15. And you think that's going to be a huge influence on your lifestyle at that point.
Massive change, but at the same time, the reason it's there is because there's only a finite pot of money.
Yeah,
and you know, it'd be lovely to be able to fund everybody, you know, pay them what they're worth all the time. If you have a bad year, don't worry, you know, next year will be better. But it's different to the rest of the world. It's, you know, the elite sport is incredibly tough, and it's incredibly ruthless because of the nature of it. And it's,
I mean, in the past, I think if someone had like a genuine issue at World Championships, there was always a little bit of discretion. It wasn't as savage as it's always made out to be. And like from hearing your story about 2003, I would think if I was a manager there, I'd think there's very little chance of Chris getting chucked off or like getting bumped down, because it's like he's got this pedigree. Let's give him another year and see how it goes. I don't think it's always quite. It's not as you're only as good as your last race.
Yeah, but I guess it's more. It's if they see a rider's on the ascendancy and showing signs of improving, and someone else has plateaued or showing signs of dropping off, and not just a little blip, but actually, that's when you start feeling secure in your place in the team and start thinking, I need to turn this around. And it in many ways, it was the making of me for the following year, because if I'd won again that year, I would have thought, I've got the winning formula. This is how I train for the Olympics in Athens. This will get me to where I need to be.
Yeah.
But the game moved on in that year. Arno Tuno did a 10. What was it, 10.9 or 10.8, the first ever rider to go under 61 seconds. And if I just trained to try and do my 101.5 or 101.6, I wouldn't have beaten him. But because I thought, right, don't scrap everything, but go back to the drawing board, really think about how I'm going to plan this year ahead, leave no stone unturned, approach it with just full commitment, and you're willing to change. If you get beaten, then you think, well, I can.
You do kind of see that with some of the other nations, because I know the German system isn't necessarily based on performance. I think the Italian system, it's based on like where you finish in the national rankings. And then sometimes you think, and you look at certain riders who are within that system, and you think you're not hungry enough. And whether that's to do with funding or to do with just personal drive or something like that, there's kind of a little bit of a mentality where, I guess we'd call them lifestylers within the GB cycling team. The people that are happy just to be on 15k on the base minimum level, and they like the lifestyle of maybe doing a day or a day and a half at a time. But those guys don't last very long in our system.
But it's you look at someone like Andy Murray in tennis, for example, who got to sort of top 20 in the world fairly quickly, and would have been getting millions through sponsorship and through prize money and everything else. And to me, when you see someone who they get to that point, it's a sort of a fork in the road. Do they continue on at this very incredible level, being doing really well? The odd tournament they might do well at, the other one they might go into the first round, but they're still keeping the ranking around sort of top 20, top 30, bringing some decent money in, having a great life.
Yeah.
Or does he go, do you know what? I want to be the best, and I'm going to just push, and you could see that he had that kind of killer instinct from day one. I watched him play in his first Wimbledon, and he was just he did so well to get through. I think it was the third or fourth round. And he lost in 5 sets, and it was, he was absolutely devastated. But you could see he had that kind of determination. So
I think that's what you see in a lot of champions, though. I think Jason Quealy is maybe a little bit of an exception, or maybe he just managed to have a good poker face. But it's like there's that. I've often said, like with some riders, you get the feeling like they'd push your mum in front of a bus if it meant they were going to get 10th off their PB. Like, it's a very selfish pursuit, and sometimes I think, like, if you're that British cycling anyway, it's a bit like being self-employed. You've got all these services around you, and how you utilise them as best you possibly can kind of determines your success a little bit.
The key thing, though, I think it's knowing how to turn it on and turn it off. So if you think that way all the time, it's exhausting. Yeah, exactly. And you don't fit in the team. You might still. There's been examples of athletes in our team who have been like that, who just. And they tend to be very isolated on their own, not really. They finish their career and they haven't got friends within the team still, because
which is a shame. Yeah.
And it's and you think, okay, it is about competition, but it's life goes on beyond cycling, and you think, I look back now, and of course I remember the racing and I remember the medals, but you remember as much the times that you had, the fun that you had, the friends that you have, and it's when you look back in your career and you think, God. It was racing bikes in anti-clockwise circles. I don't want to play things down, Phil, for you. Now that Callum and I retired.
I know what you mean.
But it's, I think, having perspective when you retire, you look back and think you've got to enjoy it. You've got to make the most of it, and you've got to treat it as though it is life or death when you're on the track. But as soon as you get off the track, being able to kind of switch off and not let the down points or the defeats,
I think that's
get to you.
So I've got to know Steve Peters a lot better in the last year or so, like that, and I think that's something he really tries to bring to the table. Like, he said to me stuff like he doesn't really care about sport. He doesn't really kind of get the adulation and the kind of hero worship that you get of people that get to the top. And I think that gave him quite a good perspective, that maybe he does get faced with a lot of athletes who can't turn that competitive edge off, and then he manages to like rein it in a little bit and say, well, let's try and get a bit more balance in your life. Let's try and get more shelf life out of your athletic career as well.
Well, he always used to say to me, because leading up to London, it was dealing with the pressure, but it's your own expectation, your own desire to do well, which builds up. It's not.
Which I think the coaches don't understand sometimes as well, because I think no one's harsher on athletes than themselves a lot of the time.
Absolutely, and people talk about external pressure, but it's not. It's not about what the fans or reading stuff in the papers or thinking people want me to win. It's always from within that you desire to do the best you can, and you're your own biggest critic. If you don't do well, it's far more common for an athlete to be really hard on themselves than to go, hey, I was pretty good, I was just unlucky. It's usually down the athlete is going to.
I don't know. Phil plays a good game sometimes. He used back in academy. I think maybe this is more of like a. He said it was perfectly normal in the German team, but it seems like a lot of things were perfectly normal in the German team. So
you could write a book about the things that were perfectly normal in the German team. Which
so every day he'd walk into the. So this start about a month out from British nationals or a month out from the Copa Grand Prix or something like that. He'd basically just barge into the flat, and he'd go, "Oh, you're nervous? I'm nervous. Oh, you're nervous? I'm nervous. Oh, you're nervous? I'm nervous. Oh, you're nervous? I'm nervous. But do you think I go fast? Do you think I go slow? I'm nervous. I'm nervous." I basically just get you wound up the whole way. So then by the time that Keane and Maddie got to the start line, he was very nervous.
It's a mind games you have to play, isn't it?
Yeah, and then even today, like you'll be sitting, like if you were on a race or something like that, he'd be next to you and he'd be going like, he's like, "I think you have a puncture, mate."
We discussed the last podcast.
We did actually, yeah.
To be fair, it's worth growing up with in the German system. Like, you're pretty hard on each other all the time, and that's what I've grown up with. And I came to the British system, and Kian was.
Well, you hear about that in certain other nations. Like, I don't know if you've heard some of the recent stories that have come out from a different European nation, but there might be like a younger guy who shows up to the track, and let's say the alpha male of that group might say, "What's the point? What are you doing? Why keep training?"
Happened recently.
Yeah.
I've had that happening to me
in Germany. But you know the example I'm talking about as well. Which nation that is?
No.
Oh, right, okay. And it's almost kind of like trying to grind them down and like trying to get them to not. But if you experience that in Germany, you're probably a better place to talk about it.
Not sure if I want to mention.
You don't have to mention the names, but just.
But I've done a pretty good time as a junior. Did 17.9, and received an email a week later saying, "Oh no, I've gone faster than that as a junior." And there was a senior rider in the German team. I've gone faster than that. You should be ashamed of yourself saying that. And apparently he did it in Coppers, which is a 333 track.
But to me...
But it's like, I'm a junior rider.
I'm that smacks of insecurity. Clearly, you'd rattled whoever it was.
Yeah,
and they were obviously thinking, this guy's looking like he's going to be pretty good. Like, people always ask me about, before race, did you get people trying mind games, trying to psych you out, bit of trash talk, like in other like cricket stuff, they do a lot of that. And I said, very rarely, but occasionally you got the odd rider that would try and psych you out, sort of stare at your grill. And I just thought, if he's taking the time and effort to switch off his focus on what he's about to do and direct it at me and try and psych me out, it must mean that he's terrified.
Yeah.
So whenever someone did that, like whoever it was that did that to you, must have been really nervous about you and about your progress. So hope you proved them wrong.
I did, yeah.
So let's keep it on culture, and on the German team they had a little bit of a culture there. Some other nations have a little bit of one there, but I think it's quite easy for us to like drop into the British team and think that's the way it's always been. It's pretty much as simple as fastest goes. But I've heard a few bits and pieces where like, and because we're kind of younger athletes, like all of us are taken out from high school, or we finish high school and we go straight down there. So I think it's quite easy to get control of that group. But with you guys in the lead up to Sydney to Beijing, that was a very different group. You're all a little bit older, a little bit more confident, have backup degrees and stuff like that. So at any moment you can say, "I've had enough of this. I'm off to do something else." Was there ever any kind of like hot points around selection at certain Olympic Games or anything like that?
Every Olympics there was selection issues and stress, and it's I guess no matter who you were in the team and no matter what your results had been previously, the level was so high and we're so close as well, that it was just the internal. I honestly think the internal pressure within the team, the competition within the team was what pushed us up to the level where we became successful. So you have Craig McLean, Jason Quealy, Jamie Staff, myself. Like John Norfolk was number 5 out of the kilo riders back in the sort of early 2000s. Yeah, and he could have got a ride for most of the other nations at the Olympics.
Well, that's people don't realise is like half the battle is to get that jersey on your back in the first place.
Just to get there, but the key is getting there without having had that battle destroy you, because you can peak at the wrong time to get selection. So the selection process was always really, really tricky to get right. Everyone wanted to be there. Everyone knew that they weren't all going to be there, and it's your teammates, it's your friends, but it's also so you have this sort of weird scenario where, I always tried to as Shane used to say to me, when you cross the line, when you walk on the track, that's when you get it out.
Yeah.
And then when you step back across the black line into the track centre, that's when you switch it off.
Oh yeah, for me it was the
So-
same with the helmet on. It would be like laughy jokey, helmet on, you get on the track, you do your business, you come off, and
Yeah.
then you lip into Phil again.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's
Terrible
a long,
teammate.
it's a long 4 years if you're
It's so
serious about it
atrocious,
all,
isn't
and
it?
it's
Yeah.
you know, it drains you, and it's hard not to think about it all the time. So, you know, it's one of the first things I noticed when I retired. I don't know what you found it, but the first time you walk up a set of stairs and you don't worry about how tired your legs feel, or you
Yeah.
don't think about the next session that you're doing the next day, and the impact of what, you know, I'm out shopping or out walking, I need to get off my feet, and
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to worry about walking. I mean, walking was the thing that we tried to avoid at all
It got
costs.
to the extremes. Pete Mitchell entered a mobility scooter when he went to the zoo once.
Did he actually?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
No.
Yeah, he did. And he actually, like, he didn't pretend to have a disability because that would be awful. But he basically said, I've got a big race coming up. Can you lend me a mobility scooter?
Pushed this old lady off it and got onto it.
Yeah, because the whole mantra, yeah, basically, if you can't stand, you should sit. If you can't sit, you know, all
Lie
that kind
down.
of stuff. Lie
Don't
down,
stand
all
when you
that
can
kind of
sit.
stuff.
Don't sit when you can lie down.
But I heard a rumour that basically, like, the selection issues got a little bit out of hand, and they basically said to you guys, like, how do you want to select the
Yes, it got that was the issue for certainly for Athens. It was really tricky because Craig never really showed his hand until the last minute. So he used to train on big gears, small gears, you know, kind of stuff that wasn't measurable. Like Jason would always train, or Jason Quealy would always train, you know, over sort of race distance, or you know, 100, 200 things that you could say, here's my speed, here's my lactic tolerance, and here's my speed endurance. So put these together, you can work out I'm going to be between a 101.0 and a 102.0. Whereas Craig, he could knock out a 104 or a 59. You just didn't know what he was going to do. So I guess that there was that kind of, well, you know, how do we get the right selection procedure to make sure that the best three guys are in the team?
And they couldn't get to the bottom of that, because I remember one time, like, you had a bit of a reputation for being a bit lazy in start sometimes. So
Surely not.
Yeah, I know. So you do a standing.
I think it's more like an adrenaline issue.
Yeah, but
like,
so like you roll out,
turn
and
it on
you,
on
you
race
do like
day.
a 7-2 for a man one, which is pretty bad. And then Shane came down one day and we figured it out because he was like, "I'll give you 20 quid if you do a 6-9." Yeah, and then all of a sudden we're on 6-8.
He's a hustler. He's a hustler.
Yeah,
Gets the work
we've
done.
had it, to be fair, we've had it once in Australia in the training camp. He said, "Go on, give you 100 quid if you go 5-1," and then everyone was trying to beat the get to 5-1, and you know, there's something to get you going. Something.
But
to aim
it's
for.
I think on a training camp where you're going through the same routine day after day, and the initial excitement of being out in Australia has waned. You know, you're 5 weeks into it, your body is just a shell, and it's another day of starts or another day of 500s or whatever it is, and you get to the last one of the day, and yeah, Shane would go, right, I'm paying for everyone for fish and chips tonight, but you've all got to go quicker in this last set than you've gone. So you never pace yourself. You never go anything other than flat out for every effort. So it's not as if you kind of hold back. It's like every effort's flat out, and you're fatiguing throughout the day. But it is amazing what an extra bit of motivation. And everybody cheering you can, you know, we've all got to get this. We've all got to hit a PB in this last effort for us all to get fish and chips tonight.
Yeah.
So everyone's kind of right. Come on for the team. And it was a really just a smart way of getting everyone together, cheering each of your teammates on in training. And then when you did do it, it was like you had a little micro victory, and you went out, we're going to get fish and chips, brilliant, down the beach. You know, it was little morale lift.
Do you remember one time it went the opposite way, where you actually got like disciplined for the laziness that you displayed in Valencia?
Oh,
So basically,
I didn't hear this story.
no.
It was like a little flying. You had to do a flying five. It was like early season.
We did like a flying 5.
Yeah.
2 laps around the top. Do another flying
which is
5.
Valencia's slippy
Yeah,
as well,
yeah, I
so
know.
you have to go so fast to maintain it.
And I did that flying 5, and I felt so sick. Like honestly, I could not.
Here we go.
I couldn't start the second effort.
Here we go.
So you had 2 laps to recover. I was about to throw up, and I got, you know.
Did you throw up?
No, but his
No.
crucial
I
mistake
think I did.
was he swung up.
Yeah, I didn't even.
If he had
attempt
stayed
it.
on the black line, done all the
Yeah.
6-day shapes,
Yeah.
pretended that it was really tough,
Nothing in the tank.
but for some reason he swung up, and then for some reason he blamed us for having
didn't
not
blame
told him
you.
to like stay on the black or all this kind of stuff, because
Yeah,
then it
'cause
would
of
be more
course.
obvious. Which is obviously the
Why
thing.
would you ride the 500 on the black line?
If you're a shell and you need to bash out an effort, you can do it, because you just stay on the black, make it look like you've died, and just try and
Tensions
get the
were
pedals
running
over it.
high, and then
And then
Things
yeah.
were said that weren't.
A lot of things
intended.
were said that day. I also remember the first time you came over, you did a rolling 5 at the track, and we were all watching it, and we were all super keen academy riders, and you did it apparently like a German rolling 5. which was like sub-maximal.
It's like a progressive one where you like start.
Yeah, but all I remember
Start on
was
the
What's
progress.
the point? All right.
yeah. So all I remember was we were rolling round, and you see Phil basically maintaining like 45k an hour for a rolling 5, and then Ian Dyer turns to us and says, "If you do that, boys, you're going home in the next."
That was my first month on the program. I came from Germany.
Yeah,
Fair
we
play.
know.
Fair play. I remember he came out here once to do a little turbo session, or you came to use the gym.
Yeah, that was
And I
after
said,
Rio.
After Rio, I said, "Come on." He said, "I want to get fit. I'm going to do some intervals. I want to try and get." Oh God, just hop on the little watt bike thing. Little
That's
turbo
when
trainer.
when I haven't done effort for around 3 or 4 months and I forgot how much it hurts.
So yeah, he got on. And said, "Right, okay, just do this, this, and this." Okay, right. Like 10 minutes later, he's like,
Yeah.
In the back garden.
yeah, there was a little bit of dead grass that was there for about 6 months after that.
Well, this is a bit close to the bone, but Kean and I always said to Phil, like, you know, when you just had a really tough week's training and you DNF, and then Phil was like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, you know, you just can't do anything. You just want to lie on the couch and like, for love or money, like the hottest girl in the world could walk in and you'd just be like, "Nah, not today, not today." And he was like, No, I have no idea what you mean. And then we're like,
Never been that way before.
never been that way before. That's probably
No,
quite
no, no.
illustrative. But we'll move back to cycling for now. Anyway, so I guess
Can I just ask Phil a question though?
yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Phil, you've gone from being a Man 1 specialist, so training for super short distance, absolute maximum torque and power, and then you've gone to do the sprint, slightly longer, but there's a chance you might even consider going for Callum's old spot,
The old man.
3.
Man 3, yeah.
And that would involve a massive shift in the way you train, doing over distance stuff, the lactic tolerance stuff. You know, A, are you still thinking along those lines? And B, you know, are you looking forward to the challenge that would create?
Yeah, I'm thinking of going for Man 3. I don't think the training will be a massive difference from Man 2. I think you need to do a few longer efforts, but I don't think it will be much different for me personally to do a good Man 3, because I think for me the start being, getting on easy is probably the biggest point.
I'll come out with a slightly controversial opinion. I think for that team to get up there and get the consistent results, I think people need to stop jumping around from 1 to 2 to 3 to 2 back to 1 and all around. I think at some point those positions need to calm down a little bit. And then you're like, I'm going to give it all. And it doesn't matter what competition I've got, I'm going to give it all for this position, I guess. And then if it still doesn't come together by the games, then you can make the best with what you got a little bit.
But I think it's tough because everybody wants to get that spot in the team.
Yeah.
You know, they want to be guaranteed that
Yeah.
they're going to be in the team sprint team. And it's almost like, kind of musical chairs. You're kind of waiting to see, well, if he goes for that one, then that means I'm going to go for that one because, I don't think I've got a chance to get in that place. Or actually, do I play for my absolute strength and go back to this one?
Yeah.
But it's 4 into 3 or 5 into 3 doesn't go. So I guess it's about having confidence and say, well, do you know what? It doesn't matter what the rest of them do. I've decided my best chance or my best position will be 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Pick it and go for it and just train like an absolute demon for that. And then let the rest of them,
it's kind of what will be a little bit.
But, it's kind of let your legs do the talking. But I know what it's like though. It's stressful when you're thinking, oh God, after 4 years of training, I might not get the team. And it's a horrible thought to be the one on the sidelines cheering them on. As much as you sort of want to be one of the team players, you also think, well, I want to be the one that's doing the job on the track.
My main training is for Man 2, but I've actually done a few Man 3s, and I've done some pretty good times for doing it the first time. And for not having done any training for Man 3, I think it's a big room.
But Man 3's changed so much. In the old days, it was about, a kilo rider.
Yeah.
You did a good kilo. That's what you need for Man 3. But now you've got to be.
You have to do a 17.1, 17.0 by yourself really to be able to get on. So
because the gears are so big that if you can do a 17.0 solo, then you can get on at 17.0 pace at Man 3 with a bigger gear, which means you can sit and recover during the second lap and then just squeeze on it.
And all that lactic work in the world, if you can't get on, that doesn't help you.
Yeah.
So you need to be, first of all, getting on is probably the biggest part, and then the rest comes.
You look at the Dutch and what they're doing now and how fast they're going, the splits that they've got.
It's a team of ones, is almost.
Exactly.
So what's your take on how the sport's transformed? Because obviously, like, say to the point where you came into the sport and then by the time you left, there's such that transformation was already flying down the road. And I think it's almost kind of comes down to a little bit of why I thought this is my time to go, because I'd always struggled with the strength and the peak power, and for me that element with the big gears was just getting like more and more prominent. And like in the lead up to Rio, like, I was really struggling to get on, and then all of a sudden we're talking about doing a 16.9 in man 3. Like, that's where it comes. So what's your take on the progression of the sport?
It seems to be that we for so many years we just accepted what came before, that you like at Meadowbank, you turn up, you put on an 88-inch gear or 90-inch gear, and that's what the sprinters use. Endurance use 86, and it's about spin to win, cadence, about fluency and pedaling. And I guess it comes down to science, it comes into data, people being able to collect data and actually prove and show that it's more efficient. Lower cadences are more efficient. It's about the torque, it's about using almost as big a gear as you can stick on the bike. We used to move up like an inch or 2 inches. That's gone too far. Back an inch or up half an inch. They've gone up from what we were riding 104 in the kilo, or the Kieran, sorry, up to like 120 odd. Basically a 60 on the front and an 11 on the back, or whatever. I mean, it's almost ridiculous the size of gear. But it happened just at the end of my career. So just coming into the final World Cup, I was riding the sprint in Kazakhstan, and I'd had just a terrible day of training in Manchester, doing flying hundreds. It wasn't going well at all. I think I was in like 100-inch gear, 100, 102. And then Jan said, like, either we pack up and go home, or just stick on. He said, stick a massive gear on. Just see what happens. If you're not going to go any slower, or you're not going to, it doesn't matter. Just go up and have a shot. And I was like, I'm exhausted. My times are going down. There's nothing in the tank. I was like, give it a go. Because everyone else was starting to use big gears, and I was like, it's too big. And I just stuck this gear on. He said, you've got to really get it going at the top. So coming through turn 1, turn 2, really squeeze on it at the top of the track. Use way more effort than you would normally do at that point, and then just get out the saddle and treat it like an acceleration and see what happens. And I did this flying 100, and it felt like I was doing about 40 k's an hour. At the bottom of the track, I felt
it looked slow as well.
It felt awful. It looked terrible. And I rolled in, and he sort of said, "What do you think then?" I was like, 5.3. He said, "Look at the watch," and it was on spokes. I did like a 5.0 something, and I'd been doing, it was 2/10 quicker than I'd gone for the previous efforts, and it was just like, bloody hell, this is it felt awful. So went to the World Cup in Kazakhstan, stuck it on, and went. I think I did 9.8 out there when I wasn't even going that well. Qualified quickest, and I didn't use a massive gear. I think it was 112 or 118 or something, and now 120 odds they're using.
Oh, plus,
but it's definitely changed things. But from a team sprint, you've still got to start it from the bottom of the track. You're not launching from the top with gravity. You've got to get that mass moving.
As Uncle Shane used to say, anyone can fall off the top of a track.
From the top of a tall building. I don't care about it.
Oh, no, fair
enough. It has changed. The sport has changed, and you look at the times now. Steph Martin doing a 10.4 at the track in Manchester when, Berlin it was.
It's incredible.
That would have qualified our top 12 in the World Championships in 1999 for the men.
Do you think the athletes are better now, or it's just technique?
Every generation of athlete, it's their responsibility to raise the bar. And you look at it, you always look back 10, 20 years from when you're racing and think, God, if only I'd been around then. Because look at the times are much slower. But the reason that the progression happens is because it's basically one team or one individual will raise the bar, and then the rest will say, that's how you do it, and they'll follow. And then someone else will do the same thing. Yeah. And we'll look back in 20 years' time at the times they're doing now and go, I wish I'd been around then. They only did 9.5s. That's pretty pretty easy. Whereas now you think 9.5 to qualify quickest at a Worlds is just mind bent. Sub 10 was exciting when you got remember in Burgan went sub 10 at sea level.
So even only 5 years ago, if you go under 10 seconds,
it was a big deal. Everyone used to give a little round of applause if someone did a 9.9 or something like that, and now you're not qualifying if you do that time. It's amazing. So let's round off the cycling discussion with
people still watching this now.
Amazingly, people still watch. I don't listen.
See them, like the numbers dropping off till the end.
Phil can watch that, and
there's no one left.
He texts me every single day, and he's like, "Oh my God, people drop off at 43 minutes in."
That was the first podcast.
We need to be doing something at 43 minutes in.
I hope people are listening that far, because otherwise,
I mean, like, as much as some of the guys look at data and overanalyze it, you couldn't give a shit about that. But when it comes to the podcast data, you're all over that graph trying to see.
I need it. I like it.
So let's go back to the stool analogy. So BC's been through a lot.
I thought you were meaning about something else.
The table, sorry, the four legs on the table.
Medical stools there.
So that was the golden age. That set the culture. That was the whole marginal gains, logic over emotion. Developing our own kit. fastest goes, all that kind of stuff. That was the golden age, and that set the tone for many Olympics after that, I guess. And then obviously we had, we ended up losing. I think it was Boardman that went first, and then it was Steve, and then Dave, and then Shane. I don't want to get too much into the whole kind of the bullying and all that kind of stuff, but let's say about like, where do you think everyone's question is about when is BC's good run going to end?
I think what we've established now is you look at, there was like a junior women's road race that was oversubscribed. I saw a couple of weeks ago, like a national one where, I don't know, 60 odd turned up for. In the old days when I started racing for junior racing, so often you'd enter a race and you get the entry return saying we've got 8 entries for the junior men, so that there's no race. You can race with the veterans and the women and the juniors all together, and the fourth cats, whatever, to club together to get just enough people to make a race. But there just weren't enough people racing. And you look now and you see just how, because of the success the teams had, because we've got Geraint and Bradley and Chris winning the Tour de France and everything else, every BMX, road, mountain biking, track, there's success from Britain, which creates sort of aspirational role models. So kids have got something they want. It looks quite exciting. And so, regardless of, I think
like
now,
Little Jack back in the day.
Well, I just think that we might not necessarily win 8 out of 10 gold medals at every Olympics from now on, but we've got such a great influx of young riders coming in that you're going to guarantee that the level will be high. Yeah, there'll be a slight fluctuation. I think it goes in sort of in seasons, if you like, or it goes in fits and starts.
Because the statistics of it are amazing. So it's like every rider that British cycling has entered into an Olympic Games, bar one since Beijing, has come away with a medal of some colour. And you think that's just an amazing kind of statistic to go on. I think back at Rio 2016, there was probably a lot of talk that it might be over, because we lost Shane, our performance director, 100 days before the Games, and from the outside looking in, it looked like British cycling was in turmoil, I guess. And I remember when we had a bit of a discussion the other day about who said this first, whether it was Chris or you, but you came into the village and then you said, you're going to do it again. You're going to get on that. You're going to get on the track, and you're going to take off, and the other nations are going to be scratching their heads as to why. What gave you that belief that was still going to be something that would come together? There was still something in that culture that was so resilient despite all the shit in the press and all that kind of thing.
I guess the riders were so focused on what they were doing, and I remember what it's like being an athlete and just the stuff. Everything's happening around you, but you're so focused on your own little world that the sky could be falling down in the background. It didn't matter. You were so focused on training, resting, diet, and that was it. So I came down, I saw you guys in Rio, in the village, but I also saw the times you were doing in Newport, more importantly, and thought, bloody hell, they're absolutely flying. And so, I went in there, and I looked like the best pundit in the world on the TV. You guys made me look amazing, because I was like, yeah, he's going to do a 9.5 here, boom, 9.5. Yeah. How did you know that? Yeah, she's going to do this time, bang on. She's going to win gold. She'll probably get silver, yeah. And it was only because I'd seen, it was you'd proven already on that final stage, and I knew that with the, freshening up, good kit on, morale high, and these amazing training times, it was bringing everything together. And the rest of the world, I think, had come to London to the World Championships and had thrown everything at it, and you guys had pretty much matched them. Had a fantastic world. It was the best World Championships in 4 years, but you were on the ascendancy, whereas the rest were kind of had plateaued at that point, and some were even going to drop off. But again, it was the team sprint first day. Knock it out of the park. You could see, I was watching other teams in the track centre after your qualifier, and you could see them just going, oh, God, not again. Yeah. You could just see the kind of like, and the excuses were coming out immediately.
Olympic record opener straight away.
Yeah.
And some nations go extremely fast in World Cups, and they come to the Olympics and they go like half a second, nearly a second slower.
I've seen the weirdest thing, I think.
Yeah.
I remember Theo did that. He did 10.3 in Beijing, and I was just like, how, you were doing quicker than that at the Rotterdam 60. How can you come to the most important race in your career and underperform? And I guess that the answer is that there's so much pressure and build-up and stress and distraction, and whilst it is still just riding a bike on a 250 track like you do anywhere else, the Olympics feels different. And if you let that get to you, then you underperform. But if you can just stay focused and remember that everything has been building towards this moment, but it's still just pedaling your bike around a track.
Yeah,
it's just like any other competition, really.
So we'll wind it up here. One final question. Obviously, I'm still waiting for the call. It's been some time actually as well, but when it became public knowledge that your son was called Callum, spelt with 2 L's,
Yep.
I thought, I'm going to be the godfather.
Well, I don't think you even need to be. I think it kind of goes it goes without saying. You know, clearly you were the inspiration.
I
think it's the biggest compliment
Well,
you
you
could
don't
give
name your
Callum
kids
is-
after people you hate, do you?
True.
So I'm never going to, Philip's not going to be a popular name.
We were going to call Chloe Philip, but then she's a girl, so
Just a girl, yeah.
I think
Philippa.
I think Callum
That's-
needs his dad actually.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
Chloe that's crying now.
Oh,
Is it
okay.
Chloe?
Well, we'll wind it
Yeah.
up here. Thank you
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much for coming on.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Well, you remember me when you become like, Graham Norton and Jonathan Ross, and you're doing big TV shows and you become famous
Oh
for
yeah,
your-
you're getting
for
invited.
stuff
yeah,
other than
yeah.
cycling. Will I still get an invite on the show?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
I always try and keep Phil's feet on the ground. He does get big ideas.
It's a good way to be. Aim high.